Hey everybody, Off the Mic Sports Network here. Another edition of Off the Top Rope. A big story on NXT last night. I already talked about it. I think Blake Monroe is going to ultimately. I think she's going to win the NXT Women's Championship in relatively short order. I could see it before the Great American Bash, if not at the Great American Bash. I think it's going to happen. No disrespect to JC Jane. I think Blake Monroe is clearly being positioned as, a mega star, not just in NXT, but in all of WWE. But I'm going to take it a step further. Blake Monroe's been there for 3 weeks. I love Obafemi. I like a lot of the other pieces there. Sol Ruka, a lot of the great women's division pieces that are already there in NXT. I love Trick Williams, even though he's now holding another company's belt. There's the men's division. I love Javon Evans. Like there's a lot of pieces there in that company that I really enjoy. But you can already tell in 3 weeks, Blake Monroe is the face of NXT. In 3 weeks, Ricky Saints, Ethan Page, you could name anybody off this. I don't think anybody has walked into that place, right off the bat, walked into that place in less than a month and feels like they are already, bigger than everything else there. And some people will come at me and say, well, Mike, why isn't she on the main roster? I can totally see why people would be upset by that. But if you throw Blake Monroe, Mariah May on the main roster, first of all, it gives her a chance to adjust to the WWE style. She wrestles more of a, Joshi, more strong style type of match than, a lot of women there. I think that's one of the reasons why Julia ended up in NXT, why Stephanie Vicaire ended up in NXT. Like, some people say, well, why did Jade Cargill get to go to the main roster? Jade Cargill got to go to the main roster because in AEW, she didn't really have to, mold herself into much. And she already had a presentation that, in the same respect as, Blake Monroe, Mariah May, she just didn't have the experience to back it up. And some people say, well, they could have had her have matches. Listen, if they would have thrown Jade Cargill right in there and she had the presence that she already did, you would have been thinking about the same thing that I'm thinking about right now with Blake Monroe. It's like, she's got to be the champion. But we obviously know that Jade, in terms of a wrestling capacity, that's not her strong suit. Her look and I think some of her personality really shines through in her presentation. That's really what sells. Blake Monroe's got everything. She's got the wrestling ability, the ability to talk. She's got the ability to do everything. And now she's got basically like this pseudo cosplaying Sabrina Carpenter, which plays into pop culture too. I mean, some people say it's more of a Toni Storm gimmick. It's not. But I don't know if I've ever seen an outside talent walk into NXT like Blake Monroe has immediately and feels like the biggest fucking deal in that place. Like, she should run NXT for at least a little bit here for most of this year. And then, maybe have her come up in the Women's Royal Rumble. And then, around WrestleMania time, she's officially an active member of the main roster. Like, you don't need to rush this. And, people could be mad that she is in NXT and she feels like she's miscast. Like, listen, yeah, she obviously feels bigger than, JC Jane, and she feels bigger than even some of the people. The only person that really, from a, equity standpoint, that I really think from on reputation alone, Jordynne Grace, being a former women's championship in Impact and TNA, really has anything to measure up. And Jordynne Grace is going to be on the main roster in short order. There's a lot of other women in this division. They don't have the reputation and, like I said, equity and everything that you need to succeed in this business, like the former Mariah May, now known as Blake Monroe. She is a megastar. She feels like such a big deal. For God's sake, they had 4 women's matches on this show on NXT to determine a challenger at Evolution, and she was the main event segment with the champion in her 3rd week there. She already feels like the biggest star there. I love Obafemi. He feels like a freaking star. Not even Obafemi, even as big and intimidating as he is, feels like as big of a star as Blake Monroe does already, being in NXT literally for 3 weeks. It's one of the main reasons why I'm telling people, guys, it is not going to be long before she holds the title. They recognize what's going on here. That's why they put her in the main event. That's why they had her do that contract signing on a night where 4 women's matches happen on the show to determine a women's championship challenger. If you think that Blake Monroe is not walking into Evolution as the women's champion, you are fucking crazy. And it may be ambitious to have, Blake Monroe potentially wrestle 2 matches in the same weekend. Okay, cool, whatever. It is what it is. So, um, I'm just here to tell you guys, man, it's not it's she feels like a fucking superstar. They've nailed the presentation. They've nailed like even the entrance music, which is hard to do with Def Rebel screwing everything up. The vignettes, the Sabrina Carpenter stuff that's tagging in. Everybody wanted to knock on the name change. Who gives a shit? Like she feels like it, I'll say this, and people will take this out of context and say, well, like she feels like the star of NXT. I'm not going to say bigger than NXT because that's just, like there's people there, but she has walked right in there and fucking owned the place in 3 weeks. And she has the equity and the stature to back it up. It's crazy. The presentation just, it's out of this world. And because hey, she's got a different style. She can mold herself into it. She can work with a bunch of talented women, help them get better. I think this is a win-win situation for NXT. They get a star that they can take to CW and say, this is our face of our brand moving forward. She's the face of NXT as far as I'm concerned moving forward. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys. Bye-bye.